43. Luke chapter 6, verses 43 to 48.
43 to 48.
Yes, can someone read that?
Okay, let me read. A tree and its fruits. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. The good man brings good things out of the good store up in his heart, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil store up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart his mouth speaks.
All right, thank you. So what does this passage say about fruit? What can you learn about fruit in this passage?
From the root up, if it's good, it's good. If it's not good, it's not good.
That's right. Yeah, it's a reflection of the soil. It's a reflection of where it came from. My father. How many of you garden? How many of you have a garden where you grow food, flowers? How many of you garden where you grow fruit? You actually grow like vegetables or something like that. Any of you have a garden like that? Okay. Well, my dad has a garden like that. He lives in North Carolina, so he lives on a lot of land. It's like 2 or 3 acres. So he has a large, almost mini farm where he grows a number of vegetables. He grows onions, he grows green beans, watermelons, you name it, he grows it. And one thing I know is that when you have a seed and you buy seed and there's carrots listed on and there's a picture of carrots on there, you plant it in the ground, in 3 months, you're going to get a carrot. You're not going to get an onion, you're not going to get a rutabaga or a watermelon, anything like that. So I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise here. So this is going to be a little bit messy. So just excuse me a little bit. But, oops. Yeah. So, why did water come out of the cup?
Because we shake it in this bowl.
Yeah, okay. So, let me ask the question this way. Why did water come out of the cup? Because water was in the cup, that's right. So, Coke was not in there. And milk or juice, none of those things were in the cup. It was water. So water came out of the cup because water was in the cup. In the same way, parenting starts with the parent. So if you want your children to be godly, you have to be godly. If you're not godly, you're not going to get, chances are you're not going to get godly children. So that's what we're going to start with today, is starting with you as the parent and your relationship with God. So if you think about the word parenting, this is a little bit easier now that I'm in the English congregation. You can't spell parenting without the word parent. I had a problem with that in Chinese. Let me say English. You can't spell parent. You need the word parent. It starts with the parent. So before you get into how do I get my child to do this or do that or think this way or think that way, it starts with you, right? And just like this passage tells us about fruits and how fruits that come out, they're a reflection of what comes out of the ground. They're a reflection of their seed. In the same way, the child's a reflection of the parent. And the child's relationship with God is a reflection of the parent's relationship with God. So before you ask the question, what will become of my kids? What will become of my teenagers? We have to ask the question, what's becoming of me? So that's what we're going to talk about today. When you drive in your car, you have rear side view mirrors, right? And I think some newer cars adjust for this, but in all side view mirrors, there's an area called a blind spot, right? And that's the area where you can look in the mirror and you may not always see a car. So that's why a lot of times you're driving training, you have to glance behind you to check for your blind spot before you merge into another lane so you're not merging into another car and crashing and getting in an accident. And a lot of times in our spiritual walks, we have blind spots. And oftentimes, in the development of our children, it's the blind spots, a lot of times, that will manifest themselves in the development of our children. So it's very important for us as parents to understand where we are before God and understand our blind spots, understand the areas where we fall short that we may not even be aware of in order for us to be able to raise godly kids. So let's look at these fruits here. We talked about fruit in this passage earlier. I'm going to go to Galatians chapter 5. So here's another passage I would like you all to read. This is in Galatians chapter 5. And then we're going to read verses 19 to 22. So what are good fruits? What are bad fruits? We're going to learn that by looking at this passage here in Galatians 5. So Galatians 5, Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 through 22. Can I have a volunteer to read those verses, please?
The acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So we learn a little bit more about what fruits are. So we hear in Luke chapter 6 that fruits are a reflection of the trees. And now we learn about what those fruits are. So the fruits of sinful nature, like you said, they're obvious: sexual morality, impurity, debauchery, greed, factions, or fits of rage. And then we learn about the good fruits, which are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, which is often called the fruits of the Spirit. So now the $1,000,000 question is, how do we go from a bad tree to a good tree? How do we go from putting out bad fruits to putting out good fruits? Is that the tree is a reflection of its root? How do we go from a bad tree to a good tree? Matthew 7, Jesus talks about how in chapter 7, he talks about how every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So what do we do? Right? If we have bad fruit, what do we do about that? So Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26. Can someone read that verse as well? Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26. Someone turn there and just read that one verse. Ezekiel 36:26. What do we do about this problem of the heart? How do we fix it? And this verse will tell us the answer. Can someone read Ezekiel 36:26? Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 26.
I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws.
All right, thank you very much. So, how do you fix this problem of bad fruit? How do you go from bad to good? Well, the answer is you don't. And that's the hard truth. You don't. God has to take out your heart and then give you a new heart. You can't make a bad tree a good tree. You have to replace the tree. If you have a garden and you have defective plants, you remove them. You can't make them good plants. So God has to give you a new heart. So for us here today as parents, if we have bad fruits in our lives that could be manifesting themselves in our children, we have to ask God for a new heart. We have to ask God to replace our heart in the areas that do not glorify Him. So, first question I want to ask today is, have you made a commitment to the Lord Jesus Christ? And the first automatic reaction is, of course I am. I'm here, right? I'm here in church, I'm here in a parenting class. But if I were to look at your life and see all the personal and private moments that you have, would I be convinced? And here's the better question. if your kids were to look at all your private moments, which I'm pretty sure they've seen a number of them, would they be convinced of that answer? If I were to ask them behind closed doors without any pressure to answer a certain way, what would their answer be? How would they answer that question? And if you have made that commitment, what kind of commitment is it? What kind of commitment have you actually made? And a lot of times, it's very easy for us to just automatically think, of course I made a commitment because I'm going to church, I'm going to Sunday school class, I serve in the choir, I sing in the choir, I play in the praise band, I serve by helping out in Sunday school, I help out as a deacon. But what kind of commitment have you made to the Lord? Because there's a commitment that you made to a church. What kind of commitment have you made to the Lord? Beth Moore, the famous Christian artist, author, and speaker, said you can't fake the faith. And you will live out what you really believe. And that's why Jesus said, every tree is marked by its fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Another saying that came from a man I respect is Lon Solomon, pastor of McLean Bible Church. He said, speed of the leader, speed of the team. I'll give you a story when I was at McLean. So when I was at McLean leading the youth group, there was a family in there, and during the time when I was there, they came to church one Sunday, and then they were you could tell that something was off with them. So the mother looked a little downcast. And then I started to converse with her. And then she told me that morning, she and her husband had separated. I mean, like they separated, they told the kids of it. It happened like that weekend. And then that morning, she and her husband told the kids before going to church, and then they went to church. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty rough. So me and Heather make an appointment to go out and have some lunch with her and figure out what's going on with the situation. So then she tells me about all the problems that were going on in the marriage, and we ask about the kids and how the kids are going to be doing. And she told me that she had a hard time, and then I knew this already, but she had a hard time getting them involved in the church. Some of her daughters had basketball. They have 4 kids. Some had basketball, and a lot of them complained about, they can't meet friends at the group and didn't want to come and stuff like that. So I started to ask her, I'm like, well, what kind of, what cell group are you in? What we call it cell group, they call it small group. What small group are you in? And she said that she's not in a small group. And then I began to ask this question gently, given that this is a very accomplished woman. I mean, she runs an investment banking firm, and she's a lawyer at this investment. She's the legal side. He's the financial side. So she's a very accomplished, corporate lawyer in investment banking. So I mean, they live in North Bethesda, and they live in one of those like really big like mansions, So I began to ask her gently, given that this is a very powerful, accomplished woman. I said, how can you expect your kids to go to a place spiritually that you're not willing to go to, right? If you're, and so I asked her, like, why aren't you willing to be in the group? And she said her work schedule makes it difficult, and a lot of times there's travel, and there's other things like that, and she's busy with managing this and managing that. And I said, well, think about it this way. Like, you want your kids to come, and then they're not coming because they have activity or whatever it is that is in their schedule that's preventing them from going. And then you're telling me that you want to figure out a way to get her beyond the excuses that she's making to get her to come out to participate in the small group discussions and Bible study. I said, how is that any different than what you're telling me about your reasons for not being in a small group yourself? I mean, aren't those excuses the same? Because while they may not sound as childish as what the teenager is saying, isn't it the same thing ultimately? Isn't what you're doing the same exact thing? How can you expect your children to go to a place spiritually that you're not willing to go to yourself? And your children will only go as far as you're willing to take them. They're only going to go as far as you go. And every now and then you'll get 1 out of 200 kids that will go to a place spiritually that the parents are not. But that's a roll of the dice. It's a gamble. You can't plan for that. In most all families, the children only go as far as the parents do. And if you're not willing to go to great lengths for Christ spiritually, then your children won't either. And oftentimes, if you look at your children and their fruit, look at yourself and your fruit. Like, what am I doing? How strong is my commitment to Christ? So we need to look at ourselves, not just try to figure out what our kids are doing. Start with ourselves. Parenting starts with the parent. So let's break down the fruits. So we talked about fruits and talked about what constitutes good fruit. So the 9 fruits of the Spirit, we'll go through them again. Let's see if we can remember what they are.
Love,
Love,
Joy,
joy,
peace,
patience,
yeah,
gentleness,
kindness,
kindness,
self-control.
Self-control.
faithfulness, gentleness,
Goodness.
goodness, yes. Goodness. So there's 9 fruits. And self-control. So these are the 9 fruits of the Spirit.
Steve, do you feel that this list is pretty comprehensive? Do you think that it was intent of the author that, these are the 9 that covers 90% of all the characteristics section? Or do you think that these are some of the fruit, or?
I mean, you can say these are some. It doesn't say this is comprehensive.
Yeah.
But this gives you a pretty good idea of what are fruits of the Spirit, and you can and they expand.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm gonna extrapolate and explain them a little bit more. Obviously, humility is not mentioned on this list, but humility. I mean, a lot of them kind of fall in these categories if you extrapolate.
Yeah.
You know, so
Okay.
you can kind of. I mean, that's one example, but I mean, there's other words, other things that you can describe, but through this list and given the time I have left, I'm going to. This is a pretty comprehensive list, at least to start with for today.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the other things I'm going to go through in the next classes as well. But thanks for asking the question. So we'll start with these 9. So love. Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 14. It says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity." So there's a lot of other things that were not mentioned on this list, as you said, but love binds them all together. Love is like the glue that holds all those things together. So think about the foundation of a house. If you don't have a good foundation, the house is going to crumble and fall. So when I was moving into my mom's house before Ryan was born, Heather and I moved to my mom's house to save money to buy a house of our own because this area is so expensive to buy anything in terms of real estate. But when we moved in there, we decided to renovate the basement to accommodate a family, accommodate a baby. So we went out and hired a contractor to come and renovate the basement. So he got a bunch of different materials, obviously that you need. You need wood, you need drywall, you need the electricians to come out and redo all the electricity, carpets, etc. So a bunch of different materials are used in building a house. But what would happen if when you started to build a house, when you started to build the foundation, you used sheetrock, the drywall material? What would happen to the house? It would collapse, right? Because sheetrock can't support a house. You need stronger materials. Now, do you use sheetrock when you build a house? Yes, you do. But sheetrock is not the foundation. And love is foundation, right? In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I am only a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames but have not love, I gain nothing." And then he goes on to explain in verses 4 and 7 what love is. It's patient, it's kind, it does not envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And that's evidence that you made a commitment to Christ. So do you have that kind of love? Is love the foundation of all that you do? And if it's not, a lot of things don't matter. You can teach wonderful messages about life. You can give advice about life, give advice about calculus and mathematics that's spot on, that can help them get all A's and get into Stanford. Right? But if you have not love, it's worthless. It doesn't mean anything. And kids can sense that. And oftentimes they reject it if the love is not there and not behind all the advice that you give them. So love is highly important. I mean, it's the foundation of all, as we see from the scripture here. So next is, that's the foundation. So these 9 are going to kind of build on each other. So love is the foundation. Next are joy, peace, and patience. So love is foundation. Joy, peace, and patience are stability. Kind of categorizing these 3 here. So stability. Kids need stability. They need consistency in their families. And these 3 characteristics provide stability and consistency for your teenagers. Because if you're able to have these 3 things be greatly manifest in your life, then it will provide a lot of security for your kids. Because it will provide a lot of security in knowing that you really are a follower of Jesus Christ. You really mean what you say. Your faith is authentic and it's real. And here are 7 ways in which you can cultivate joy in your life. Because a lot of people, they go through phases, right? They'll go through a phase where maybe in the new year, we need to go to church more often. We need to invest more in the local church, and then you'll go, and then you'll go every week, and then things will happen, and then you may have work issues or work obligations. They may have school issues and school obligations, and I know of some parents where there are phases where they'll take their kids and they'll be really involved in a youth group, and then an SAT course will come, and then they'll be out, and then the SAT will end, and they'll be back in, and then it'll be time for robotics competition, and they're out, and then there needs to be a stability in your life. Here's 7 ways you can cultivate joy in your life. Rehearse with God the reasons that you trust Him. This is from a devotional I got, by the way. Tell Him which of the attributes is your favorite. You can read scriptures like Psalm 103, verse 1. Join with another believer in prayers of thanksgiving. Delight yourself in His character. Keep a joy journal as number 2. So record the reasons you have to rejoice and reminders of God's faithfulness that you encounter in everyday life. In addition, why not press a leaf from your prayer walks into its pages or include a photo of a person that brings you joy each time you remember him or her? Think big. Expand your journal into a joy box or a joy drawer that brings floods of joy each time you open it. The third thing is surround yourself with joyful people. Joy is contagious, so that would also mean probably spending less time around people who are more negative or people who complain. I mean, as much as you can. So the more positive people that you're around, the more positive you'll be. Number 4, approach life's challenges and trials redemptively. So God doesn't waste difficult circumstances of your life, but He uses them to develop His character in you. Romans 5:1 and James 1:2 through 4 help in processing pressure productively. Joy oftentimes is found in the midst of a lot of trials and circumstances. Make praise and gratitude a habit. One of the things I do is I will write down 10 things I'm thankful for from God. They'd be very simple things every day. Like what are the 10 things? And it's very easy to think of 10 things you're thankful for in an area like this, right? I mean, you have a house, you have a refrigerator full of food, you have a closet full of clothes, etc. 10 things you're thankful for, and start every day with that. It will change your mindset. I know it does for me. It changes my mindset about approaching the day and approaching all the things that go on during the day, no matter how bad or stressful they are. Fill your mind with music, and it's Christian music, that is. In the radio, you turn on the 91.9 or Pandora, a Christian station, Spotify. You all know what Spotify is? Okay. Spotify. It's an app on your phone. It's like I don't even know what Pandora is. Okay, it's like Pandora, but you can have a little bit more ownership rights to the song, or iTunes. Download Christian songs and put them on your phone, basically. Is what I'm take the long view. For example, in investing, right? Investors advise their clients. How many of you are in financial services investing? You in that field? Okay. Well, yeah. Then you advise your clients to make decisions in the long term, right? You don't just invest for today. You invest long term. You don't just put all your money into something that could be here today and gone tomorrow. You want to invest with something that has some kind of staying power with your money. And even though when you invest, a few days from now or weeks from now, the investment may not seem like it's that productive, over the long haul, that's why it can turn around. That's why you stay with something when you invest in something. You make an investment. So the foundation of the house is love, but a lot of the walls that create stability are joy, peace, and patience. Do your children know, do they see these three things in your life? Do they see joy, peace, and patience? Or do they see every time you run into a situation you complain? Or every time there's a problem you have a negative attitude? That creates a lot of instability in your faith. And it makes them realize, well, okay, well, mom says that she believes in God, but if she does, why does she complain every time there's a problem? Why does she freak out every time that there's a problem? Joy, peace, and patience create stability. And the next one is actions towards others. What's right here? Actions towards others. So gentleness, kindness, faithfulness, these three. I wrote them wrong. Hold on one second. These three, which is gentleness, kindness, and goodness, represent actions towards others. And then the last one, faithfulness and self-control, which is resistance to temptation. So these are the four main areas that I'm kind of categorized into. So actions towards others. So when I was growing up, I noticed that, I'm on tape now, so I have to be careful how I say this. Certain family members of mine go to church, get in a car, and then what seemed like very, very positive interactions in the church. You get into the car, you realize that these family members had a lot of problems with those people, and they would gossip about them. And it kind of turned me off a lot, because I realized that, man, I thought that you really liked this person. I thought you and this person really got along, and then you get in the car, you realize that they don't, right? And oftentimes, that turned me off to the faith, because I realized that these people they're not genuine. They're fake. They're not really being authentic in the way, and honest in the way in which they deal with people. So gossip, a lot of times, in terms of actions towards others, you may be kind to the person to their face. You may be kind. Your interactions may be pleasant, but if you go behind their back and you slander them, it's not kind. You're not being kind to that person. So your actions towards others, and I think we all know this to a degree, but they paint more of a picture of your faith than what you do inside the church. I'll give you an example. I hear, not necessarily your kids, but just throughout my time in youth ministry, a lot of times, one of the proponents of bringing kids into a worship service with their parents is that they can see their parents worship God. They can see their parents listen attentively to a sermon and take out the truth. But if you go home and then every time something insignificant happens, like maybe a glass falls on the floor and breaks, and you lose your temper, even if it's momentarily, it negates what you do in the church in the eyes of your teenagers. Because while it's a good idea that kids can come and see their parents worship God, they don't judge you off of how high you raise your hands during a song. They don't judge you off of how attentively you listen during a sermon. They judge you off of those things that happen at home or elsewhere. That's how you're judged. And it's like a double-edged sword. For example, if you worship, if your life is very, very godly, right? Even in the most private areas, and you go into a church and you worship God and you sing and you praise him, it's like a bonus. It works extremely well. And in terms of your kids seeing you worship God and having a life that backs it up, it really, really helps them understand you as someone who's really following after God. But if you are different at home, if your actions towards others are not kind, they're not gentle, they don't reflect Christ-likeness, when you come into a church body and your kids see you put your hands up, it works against you, because it makes them it gives them resentment. This is a hypocrite. And so even though the kids can see who this is, the gamble with having kids in with their parents is for the parents whose lives are really godly, it really helps. But for the kids whose parents are even moderately godly or up and down, it can create a lot of resentment in terms of the kids seeing, yeah, everyone thinks that you're this person, but I know differently. I know you as someone who's different. So actions towards others are, your fruit is highly important. How do you treat others in your actions away from here? Because you're not judged based on what you do here. And God's the same way as your teenagers in this respect. You don't judge them what you do here. Everyone's going to be nice to everybody in a church setting. I'm not saying that it's not important. You need to be. And when we're here, we need to be nice to each other. We need to be kind. We need to be gentle. We need to be good towards each other. But ultimately, you're going to be judged on how you are at home. You're going to be judged on how you are when you're on the phone.